Hello and welcome. I'm Seema Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Indirect talks between US and Iranian officials have taken place in Oman, led by Araghchi and Trump envoy Witkoff, while US naval forces build up in the Gulf. State media say a senior Russian military official is hospitalized after being shot in Moscow. Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev is a deputy chief at the Defense Ministry. The US military says it's killed 2 people in a strike on a suspected drug vessel in the Eastern Pacific. Officials say the boat is operating on known narco-trafficking routes and no US forces are hurt. According to Moroccan authorities, northern Morocco's Ksar el-Kebir is flooded, forcing security forces to evacuate residents. They report more than 140,000 people have been displaced across northern provinces, as forecasters warn of more heavy rain following 7 years of drought. Ukraine and Russia conclude a second round of US brokered talks in Abu Dhabi and agree to resume negotiations. Both sides carry out a swap of 314 prisoners of war, the first in 5 months. US President Donald Trump launches a new website called Trump RX aimed at lowering prescription drug costs in the US. The site allows consumers to buy discounted medicines directly from pharmaceutical companies. Netanyahu releases selected transcripts saying security chiefs assessed Gaza as stable and downplayed Hamas threat before October 7th. He argues key information was not passed to him and places responsibility on IDF and Shin Bet leadership. Trump rejects Putin's offer to extend expired nuclear arms limits and calls for a new treaty. He says a modernized deal should replace what he calls a badly negotiated agreement and has previously urged China's involvement. Now for this hour, we start with Russia. Russia has said that it would prefer dialogue with the United States after the expiration of a New START nuclear arms control treaty. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is ready to talk but prepared for any scenario. He says Russia will now gauge how willing Washington is to engage on strategic nuclear security. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has confirmed both sides agree on the need to renew nuclear talks. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says there is a shared understanding to act responsibly on nuclear arms. The New START treaty officially lapsed earlier this week, raising concerns of a renewed nuclear arms race. Let's listen into what the Russian foreign minister has shared.
Вчера истек договор о стратегических наступательных вооружениях, и возник вакуум. Наша позиция была подробнейшим образом изложена. Будем исходить из того, что, в принципе, Россия готова к любому развитию событий. Мы, конечно, предпочитаем диалог и будем ждать, насколько Соединенные Штаты будут готовы к этому же.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at the situation, how dangerous is this vacuum, and how realistic is it in your assessment that Trump wants to eye a better deal, including China, in this situation?
It's certainly good to be with you. And unfortunately, I couldn't see the comments that were made by the Russian representative then. But the issue is this: is that it's better that dialogue happens in regard to all of these issues, especially when it comes down to nuclear weapons. That's why we have the situation that we have in Iran at the moment, and we're fully aware of the actions that America took after the Israeli 12-day war with Iran last June and bombing their nuclear facilities. You go back many, many years, including after the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then from then on, and before then, in regard to having discussions about nuclear proliferation and the control of arms, and then especially after the fall of the Soviet Union and the concern about those arms and where are suitcases that can fire rockets off, etc. It's not conspiratorial. It's all out there. And as I say, it's better to have those discussions. President Trump, in the style that he has, is then sending off his emissaries to say, right, let's widen this. We need to talk with China. We need to talk potentially with other countries. That's a good thing. But let's just remember that Iran is in the background here. A country, those mullahs will not listen to that and will not want to disarm at all, even though a lot of that nuclear provision has already been taken out. But again, as I often say to you, it is going back through history and seeing how we have then got to this point. And of course, as you would say to me, the Russians are acting in the way that they are. We want to deal with America because, understandably, they are concerned as much as we are. The Europeans are turning around and going, we need to stop this war between Russia and Ukraine, and we do not on February 2022. But as I say, if you go back through Schultz, you go back to the previous Bush administrations when they were negotiating arms deals, when they were wanting to then stop or nuclear proliferation. All of this history has to be borne in mind, and remember this as well, is that within the Trump administration they would have access to some of those people that were alive at that time, many dead now, that were also negotiating with the Russians on these issues at the time. Asuma.
Yes. So how important is it for U.S. to have some kind of treaty with Russia while they pursue to include China in Trump's words, not flawed, better deal?
Well, as you and I have constantly discussed, is all the geopolitical changes that have gone on since October the 7th, 2023, and then have escalated in so many ways. When we've seen the change of the regime in Syria, just an example, and then Maduro and all the narco terrorism that you and I have personally discussed. And then the concern is that America wants to be number one. It's fighting to continue to be that when other people want a bipolar world, because they're then thinking, understandably, if China is in that backyard, we discussed the Panama Canal and all the issues around that for many years. But if they are then concerned who is in their backyard, China and other people that are very negative towards America and what it stands for. They've seen millions and millions of people come over their border under the Biden regime. This is all very important to bear in mind because they're thinking, well, hold on a minute, are we going back to the Cuba crisis when Russia, was in a position to then put nuclear weapons in Cuba? We remember that standoff, which is well before your time, but the history books would talk about that. They're also, this is what they are then concerned about, and it's what China is then able to do in various theaters. Hence why there's been this reference to the Monroe Doctrine, then redefining that as the Donroe Doctrine, saying this is within our Western Hemisphere. We wish to rule here. We are number one. All of those factors come in because, as I say, without sounding boring, underlining it again, they are very, very concerned about China continuing to flex its muscles. You are aware, as I am, as we've discussed this, all the Russian geopolitical links with Iran and China, who buys oil around people's backs to then get around all the sanctions that are being put against various countries, including Venezuela. So all of this is all part of that because they are looking into the future and they see the threat, and the threat to America in the administration is, in their words, is China. Asuma.
Mr. Sutherland, now, so do you know, as we talk about Trump trying to leave Don't Row doctrine, right? So do you think Trump wanted to upgrade US's nuclear arms? That's why he wanted to get rid of this arms treaty in the first place, or he felt like this was stopping US to upgrade their arms?
Well, at the end of the day, if they want to upgrade things and not tell anyone about it, and then they will do. It's not the first time that even within European negotiations, they will then go back on the deals that they have then struck with Russia. For argument's sake, you only, in my humble opinion, go back to the Minsk agreements. But in regard to what America is saying, there are far too many nuclear weapons in the world. There's also a very concerned about the ballistic missiles, which is also that Iran has, and the reach of that. That is not then part of these negotiations, and it's ballistic and not nuclear. But that is also then a concern. I think as Trump a number of months ago had the first meeting as a Western leader with Putin, as people have struggled to do that since the invasion of Ukraine, and actually have an important discussions along those lines. And I'm not excusing the Russians' behavior. What I want to see is both sides stopping with the amount of loss of human beings on both sides. But you are asking and saying, is this an opportunity for Trump, for the American administration to upgrade missiles, etc.? In many ways, I can't answer that, because there would always be secret projects. There'd always be actions that would be taken to make sure that they're ahead of the game. That's why America has always, and recently has been very concerned about Chinese spies and other people that are spying within America to gain knowledge. Asuma.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland, for sharing that. Please stay with us. Now we move on to Europe. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has said that the European Union is ready to hold talks with Russia to end the war in Ukraine, but parallel channels of communication will not be opened. He has made these remarks during his visit to Abu Dhabi, where coordinated talks between American, Ukrainian, and Russian representatives are currently underway. Merz has said it is widely agreed that the key to ending the conflict lies in Moscow. However, he noted that Russia's rigid stance is slowing the progress. Meanwhile, Germany's leadership role in the EU has also been highlighted, and optimism was expressed regarding rising investment and ongoing free trade discussions with the UAE. Furthermore, Merz has underlined that supporting the coordinated peace talks remains the priority regardless of the challenges. Let's listen into what the German Chancellor has shared.
Natürlich immer bereit, auch mit Russland Gespräche zu führen. Im Augenblick werden mit uns abgestimmte Gespräche hier in Abu Dhabi geführt, wie gesagt, zwischen den amerikanischen Beauftragten, der ukrainischen Regierung und der russischen Regierung. Wenn wir beitragen können, um diese Gespräche noch besser zu machen, noch erfolgreicher zu machen, dann tun wir das. Aber wir werden hier keine parallelen Gesprächskanäle öffnen. Wir alle haben ein Ziel. Wir wollen so schnell wie möglich diesen Krieg gegen die Ukraine beendet sehen. Abu Dhabi, das sind ermutigende Signale. Und das zeigt mir, welches große Potenzial wir haben. Es wird sehr stark auf Deutschland geschaut. Und es wird von Deutschland erwartet, dass wir auch ein gehöriges Maß an Führung in der Europäischen Union übernehmen. Ich habe von meiner Seite aus in allen Gesprächen gesagt, dass ich dazu zusammen mit den europäischen Partnern bereit bin, dies zu tun. Und was vor allem gesucht wird in einer Welt großer Unsicherheiten, ist Verlässlichkeit, Stetigkeit auch in den bilateralen Beziehungen. Das kann ich aus Deutschland anbieten.
Now for this, we welcome back Mr. Sutherland. He's joining us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland, for staying with us. Now, you know, we have seen not many, but few European leaders become more open to talking with Russia about Ukraine. What do you think has changed in their perspective? Do you think it's the US's role in particular, or do you think that these, coalition of the willing leaders are feeling the limits of trusting US with the mediation role? What do you think has changed?
You asked a very good question, and in many ways you were giving huge clues to the answers. And we also have to remind that the European economy, the growth of those economies is in absolute dire straits, along with their mass lunatic immigration policies as well. We have to go back to February 22. And the fact that we have to look back and say how many opportunities has various European leaders taken to then solve this war, get people around the table and have that discussion. Under the Biden administration, no, there were no efforts to do that whatsoever until Trump then reached out to Putin and said we need to meet. Hence meeting in Alaska in the way that they did. European countries, of course, understandably are then concerned if this then escalates, where they're then concerned, will Putin then take over further countries in Europe? All of that rhetoric has been there since the attack in this operation that Putin and the Russian Federation then undertook. But there are other factors, which is the state of Europe. But let's just come back to this. The important issue is the appalling loss of life on both sides. Now, whether you are then having North Korean troops fighting on Russia, but the other concern is now there was muted that other countries will then be offering troops to then fight on Russia's behalf as well, which is all deeply concerning. And if that comes from a particular ideology, that is also deeply concerning as well. We want this war to stop. And frankly, with various politicians, there has not been enough effort to do that. If not, no, we'd rather not have any negotiations. And it's also, as we also note in this country, it was very interesting how people went from COVID-19 to then all over social media, and then putting Ukrainian flags all over social media and on public buildings in this country and elsewhere. It needs to be solved. We need people to come to the table and solve this as soon as possible. And we wait with bated breath whether this is actually going to happen. Asuma.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Sutherland for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Switzerland. Authorities in Switzerland are stepping up scrutiny after the deadly Crans-Montana bar fire. A lawyer for several victims' families says he wants answers to key questions that why safety inspections were not carried out for years. One of the municipality's fire safety officers is now due to be questioned by the Valais public prosecutor. Sebastian Fantai warns the investigation will take time, calling it a long road ahead for families seeking accountability. Let's listen into what the lawyer for families of the victims has shared.
On veut juste entendre les gens qui sont responsables de la sécurité incendie de la commune nous dire voilà comment ils ont travaillé, quelle a été l'organisation interne, un certain nombre de choses de ce type. Voilà.
Allez un tout petit peu plus loin. Qu'est-ce qu'on veut savoir précisément?
On veut savoir pourquoi les contrôles n'ont pas été effectués pendant plusieurs années, et puis on veut entendre des explications à ce sujet-là, tout simplement. On veut savoir comment c'est possible. Oui, mais toutes les personnes ne sont malheureusement pas encore assises sur le banc. Et il faut que ce banc, comme disait Maître Jordan, s'étoffe quelque peu pour que les familles puissent aussi comprendre que le processus est en route.
Now we move on to Middle East. Lebanon and Syria have agreed to transfer over 300 Syrian prisoners from Lebanese jails to Damascus. Beginning on Saturday, Lebanese Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Mitri has said that the deal covers sentenced prisoners and reflects a shared will to reset bilateral relations. Syrian Justice Minister Mazhar al-Weiss has added that Damascus will address their other detainees not included in the current agreement. The officials described the move as a practical step towards justice and improved coordination between the two countries. Estimates put Syrians in Lebanese prisons at around 2,500 people, making up nearly one-third of the country's prison population. Let's listen in.
الاتفاقية التي وقعنا عليها اليوم تشبه كل الاتفاقيات الدولية التي تقول بتسليم المحكوم إلى بلده على أن يكمل محكوميته.
نعلن اليوم عن خطوة مهمة على طريق العدالة تمثلت بمعالجة أوضاع المحكومين، وهم من أمضوا فترات طويلة في السجون، وكانت أوضاعهم من أكثر الحالات تعقيدا من الناحية القانونية.
Now for this, we welcome Mr. Sol Satka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Satka, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Good to be with you today.
Thank you. Now looking at Lebanon and Syria, how significant is this coordination that's taking place, and why do you think they couldn't do this sooner?
Well, the problem with the Lebanon and Syria as a whole goes very, very deep. It goes to the core of the fact that these two nations are fundamentally flawed states that were created by the European empires more than 100 years ago. As a result, they are divided into various ethnic factions that are at war with themselves and each other. And so the fact that they are making this coordination now is very nice to see, but most likely within a matter of weeks or months or at most years, it will again fall apart into another level of bloodshed and chaos.
Right. As you mentioned, this is like the aftermath of the European colonization. So how do you think this is affecting Syria and Lebanon's relationship right now?
Well, Lebanon and Syria are both such completely broken states. The current situation in Lebanon is catastrophic. Their economy is a disaster. They've lost about 20% of their population to emigration since the beginning of Corona. Syria has lost about a quarter of its population since the beginning of the civil war. And the people that have left are very unlikely to come back because they're living very nice lives now in Germany and other Western countries. So they've lost the best and the brightest, and they are riven by tribal factionalism. So these two countries can make a deal, but these deals aren't really meaningful. They don't have any geostrategic worth or relevance, really. The only way forward for these countries is to try and uproot the various jihadi organizations that are part of their governments. That's going to be very hard, particularly in Syria, since the man currently running Syria is claiming to be a reformed jihadi, and yet there is very limited evidence of that case.
Right. And as today we saw French minister visiting Lebanon, or saying that we want to support Lebanon and its armies. How do you see Lebanese army's capacity today, as they are unable to protect their sovereignty while they have decided to release these prisoners to another nation, or to return them to their countries?
Well, exactly like you say, it's absurd. The core element of having a sovereign state is that you have a monopoly on the use of force. But not only does Lebanon not have a monopoly on the use of force, Hezbollah, if anything, has a monopoly on the use of force in Lebanon. The vast numbers of people within the official Lebanon military are themselves more devoted to Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, than to the army. So the entire thing is entirely dysfunctional, and until that is fixed, there's no way forward. The Americans were having discussions with the Lebanese yesterday, the head of the Lebanese defense ministry, and they walked out. They said, we're not going to sit here and listen to this nonsense. If you think that Hezbollah are a legitimate part of the future of Lebanon, and Hezbollah are a terrorist organization that, if you recall, have killed many, many hundreds of Americans over the years, then there's no reason that the Americans are going to continue helping Lebanon. And the French themselves, as the former colonial power, bear so much responsibility for all this, and yet they seem to be taking a different view. Well, we'll see which side wins out. My guess is the Americans here will be proven correct, and another cycle of catastrophe will befall Lebanon before anything will be made of it.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Satka for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our tech news. Physical AI robotics company Robco has raised $100 million to advance its physical AI roadmap and expand enterprise deployments in the U.S. The Series C funding is co-led by Lightspeed Venture Partners and Lingoto Innovation, alongside Sequoia Capital and other investors. CEO Roman Holzul has said that the funding will help Robco become the dominant AI robotics company for manufacturing in the US and Europe. Founded in 2020 in Munich, Robco builds a full-stack platform that enables robots to learn tasks through demonstration and self-learning, reducing setup time and boosting automation. Robco has expanded to the US, operating in San Francisco and Austin, with deployments at BMW, Daimler, Tix, T-Systems, and other global manufacturers. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.